The dense jungle stretched endlessly, a sea of green and shadows that seemed alive. Birds with feathers like liquid silver flitted through the trees, while vines thick as a human's arm twisted and coiled along the trunks. The air was humid, heavy with the scent of alien flowers and the faint tang of rain that had fallen hours before. In this vibrant wilderness moved a hunter whose name inspired fear across galaxies, Lyra Vex. She had never failed in her hunts, never missed her mark. For years she had pursued creatures for sport, but none gave her the thrill that humans did. They were clever, unpredictable, and, above all, fragile. They struggled to survive even in environments they had built for themselves. Hunting them was not just a challenge, it was an art. Lyra crouched high in the canopy, her limbs balanced on thick branches as her amber eyes scanned the undergrowth below. Her prey moved with a kind of awkward grace that fascinated her. Humans, she thought, were clumsy yet resourceful, small yet bold. They carried themselves with confidence they did not deserve, a false sense of superiority that made them entertaining to track. Below, a group of humans trudged through the alien jungle, unaware that their every step was being watched. They had arrived on this planet believing it was a peaceful world, a chance to explore, to study, to experience something new. Instead, they had walked straight into a predator's playground. Lyra observed them silently, noting their weaknesses and strengths. Most of them stumbled, sweating under the oppressive heat, distracted by the alien flora and the strange creatures that occasionally rustled in the foliage. One stood out, however. He moved carefully, his eyes scanning the surroundings, his hands testing the ground, feeling for dangers that the others ignored. Ethan Carter was unlike the others. He was not the strongest, not the fastest, but he had a mind that worked like a finely tuned machine. He noticed patterns, calculated risks, and reacted quickly. Even as the others panicked at every shadow, he remained calm, observing quietly, taking mental notes. Lyra tilted her head, intrigued. Humans rarely showed such awareness in the wild. They were usually predictable, easy to trap. But this one, he was different. Lyra shifted slightly on her perch, adjusting her grip on the branch, her claws pressing into the bark. She released a low, almost imperceptible hiss, a signal to herself, to remind her that this hunt would be unlike any she had done before. She had prepared extensively. Traps hidden beneath the leaves, pits camouflaged with brush, nets strung along narrow paths. She had studied human anatomy, human psychology, the way they reacted to fear, the way they panicked when faced with danger. Every detail had been considered. She had predicted that by now, the humans would be tired, frustrated, and ready to make mistakes. But Ethan was careful. Even now, he avoided stepping on weak branches, tested the ground before moving forward, and seemed to anticipate dangers instinctively. Lyra's interest grew. This was no ordinary hunt. She decided to watch a little longer before striking. Hours passed. The humans struggled through the thick undergrowth, their progress slow and laborious. Sweat poured down their faces, clothes soaked and clinging. They whispered among themselves, uncertain, frightened. Some froze at the faint sound of distant roars, while others stumbled over roots and vines. Ethan stayed in the middle of the group, eyes scanning, hands ready to react. He was cautious but deliberate, leading without leading, influencing without showing it. Lyra silently dropped from the canopy to a lower branch, moving closer. Her movements were fluid, practiced, almost invisible. She had spent years honing her skills, learning to move without making a sound, to strike with precision, to anticipate her prey's every move. She had always been in control, always the one to dictate the terms of the hunt. But now she felt something unfamiliar, curiosity. She studied Ethan as he paused to examine a peculiar plant, turning it over in his hands, noting its properties. She had predicted fear, hesitation, panic, but not this. He was methodical, deliberate. It was almost as if he understood the jungle better than she did, almost as if he could read her thoughts. Lyra decided it was time to test him. She triggered a small trap she had hidden earlier, a simple snare meant to catch a human by the ankle. Most would scream, struggle, and fall right into another trap she had prepared. But Ethan reacted differently. He felt the pull just in time, twisted his body and leaped aside, avoiding the snare completely. Lyra's eyes narrowed in surprise. She had expected him to stumble, to panic, to make a fatal mistake. Yet he moved with a calm awareness that unsettled her. The hunt continued. Lyra tried more aggressive tactics, releasing small alien predators trained to follow scent and sound. They were fast, silent, and deadly, designed to intimidate and corner the prey. The humans scattered, shrieking in terror, but Ethan remained composed. He lured the creatures into areas with unstable terrain, causing them to trip and get momentarily stuck, giving the others time to escape. Lyra watched, impressed despite herself. Night fell and the jungle changed. Shadows deepened, the temperature dropped, and the sounds of nocturnal creatures filled the air. The humans huddled together, trying to find shelter, while Lyra remained hidden, her senses alert. She had been tracking prey for years, and yet this hunt felt different. There was a tension in the air, a shift in the balance of power that she had never experienced. Ethan took the lead again, signaling the others to follow him silently. He had noticed subtle signs of her presence, the disturbed leaves, a broken branch, a faint shimmer in the air where she had moved through. He had no direct view of her, yet he could feel her watching, could sense her movements. Every step he took was calculated, designed not just to survive but to manipulate the environment around him, turning the jungle itself into a shield. Lyra realized she had underestimated him. She had assumed humans were weak, predictable, and easy to control. But Ethan defied every expectation. He was clever, resourceful, and unafraid. He moved through her territory like a shadow, avoiding traps, misdirecting predators, and leaving false trails. Frustration, unfamiliar and bitter, gnawed at her. She had never failed, never been outsmarted. And yet here was a human, small and fragile, doing exactly that. She adjusted her tactics, trying to anticipate his next move, but he always seemed one step ahead. The first major confrontation came just before dawn. Lyra had set a pit trap, deep and camouflaged, expecting him to fall in. Instead, Ethan noticed a faint irregularity in the soil, a subtle hint that betrayed the trap. He carefully tested the ground, then used a fallen branch to trigger it from a distance. The pit collapsed harmlessly, sending a small cascade of dirt and leaves tumbling into nothing. Lyra, who had been observing from above, lost her footing on a slick branch. She slipped, her leg catching awkwardly on a vine, and she fell with a sharp cry, injuring herself. Pain shot through her, and for the first time she tasted vulnerability. She scrambled to regain balance, her usual grace interrupted by the throbbing in her leg. She looked up at Ethan, who had paused at the edge of the pit, not out of mercy, but because he was cautious. She met his eyes for a brief moment, and something unexpected passed between them: recognition. He saw her skill, her experience, her pride, and she saw his resilience, his intelligence, and his determination. The humans regrouped nearby, unaware of the close encounter. Ethan signaled them to stay back while he examined her briefly from a distance. Lyra, despite the pain, could not help but feel a spark of respect. This hunt, she realized, was no longer about sport. It was about survival for both predator and prey. As the sun rose, casting golden light through the thick canopy, Lyra retreated to a safe distance to tend to her injury. She could no longer ignore the truth. She had underestimated humans, and one of them had bested her. For the first time in her career, the hunter had become aware that she could be outsmarted. Ethan, standing in the jungle clearing, felt a surge of cautious triumph. He had survived the night, avoided her traps, and even caused the hunter to falter. Yet he knew this was only the beginning. Lyra Vex was clever, skilled, and relentless. She would recover, and when she did, the hunt would continue. But now the balance had shifted. He was no longer merely prey. He had become a player in the hunt, a strategist, a challenge that even the most skilled hunter had to reckon with. The jungle hummed with life around them, indifferent to the struggle unfolding within it. Birds called, insects buzzed, and distant roars echoed through the canopy. Lyra, hidden and nursing her leg, began to consider something she had never entertained before: the possibility that humans were more than just prey. That maybe, just maybe, this one human could teach her something she had never known. And so the first day ended, not with the thrill of victory, but with the quiet tension of respect, curiosity, and the promise of a hunt unlike any other. The jungle had changed after dawn. The soft light filtered through the leaves, casting patterns on the ground that shifted with the sway of the trees. Birds chirped, insects buzzed, and somewhere deep in the foliage, a distant roar reminded all who moved through it that the jungle was alive and dangerous. But now the tension had shifted. The hunter who had once ruled these shadows with unmatched skill was wounded, and the human she sought to dominate was no longer merely running. He was planning. Ethan Carter moved carefully through the thick undergrowth. Every step was deliberate, every sound measured. He had survived the night, avoided the traps, and even caused Lyra to stumble and injure herself. But he knew she was not defeated. The huntress was clever, patient, and relentless. She would recover, and she would adapt. Ethan needed to stay one step ahead if he wanted to make it through the day. He glanced back at the others, who were following him with cautious trust. Most of them were frightened, still struggling with the alien environment. Their panic was understandable. Every sound, every movement seemed amplified, filled with threat. Yet Ethan moved among them like a calm center, steadying their nerves without words, guiding them past obvious dangers. He noticed broken branches, disturbed leaves, faint footprints. He could feel her presence as surely as if she were in front of him. Lyra was watching from above, her amber eyes sharp, her body tense despite the injury in her leg. She had retreated to a high branch to assess the situation. Ethan was clever, too clever. He had avoided the traps she had prepared, misdirected her predators, and even used the terrain against her. She felt a strange mixture of frustration and admiration. She had never met a human who could turn her own hunting methods against her. As Ethan led the group through a narrow passage between towering ferns, he paused. He had noticed a subtle irregularity in the ground, something that betrayed the presence of another trap. He signaled the others to stop, pointing to a thin wire stretched just above knee level. Most of the humans would have tripped without noticing, but he carefully knelt, disarming it with a stick he had found earlier. He could almost hear Lyra's reaction above, a flicker of surprise at his skill. Lyra adjusted her position, weighing her next move. The human was proving to be more than just clever. He was patient, observant, and strategic. This was no ordinary hunt anymore. He was learning her patterns, reading her behavior, anticipating her tactics. Every time she thought she had him cornered, he would slip away, leaving only a faint hint that he had been there. She realized that to catch him, she would need to rethink her approach. Ethan continued forward, careful not to disturb the environment too much. He set small decoys along the paths, rearranged leaves, and created subtle false trails to confuse her. It was a delicate balance. He needed to protect the others, maintain their morale, and outsmart a hunter who had spent years perfecting the art of tracking and ambushing humans. The group reached a clearing where the sunlight poured down like liquid gold. It was a rare moment of beauty in a day filled with danger. Ethan took a deep breath, listening to the jungle sounds, feeling the faint vibrations in the ground. He knew Lyra was watching, waiting, planning her next move. He could almost sense her frustration, sharp and precise, cutting through the calm of the morning. Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the trees. The humans froze, instinctively ducking and huddling together. Ethan remained calm. He had anticipated this. A small alien predator trained to track scent and movement leapt from the shadows, its claws glinting in the sunlight. The others screamed, but Ethan acted quickly. He grabbed a fallen branch, swinging it in a wide arc that startled the creature and caused it to stumble into a patch of thick vines. It struggled briefly before escaping, leaving the humans unharmed. Lyra watched from above, her frustration growing. This human had not only survived the night but was now actively manipulating her world. He was learning, adapting, and turning the hunt into something she had never expected. For the first time, she felt challenged not just physically but mentally. As the day progressed, Ethan continued to lead the humans through the jungle, using every skill at his disposal. He climbed trees to scout ahead, laid subtle traps to mislead the predators, and used his knowledge of engineering to create safe paths through dangerous terrain. Each move was calculated, precise, and designed to protect the group while simultaneously outsmarting Lyra. Lyra realized she needed to change her strategy. She could not rely on brute force or the usual tactics. She needed to anticipate him, to think like him, to predict his next move. For the first time, she considered the possibility that she might lose, and the thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Ethan paused near a river that cut through the jungle. The water was fast, clear, and filled with strange, bioluminescent fish that glowed faintly in the sunlight. He needed to find a way across without alerting Lyra or the predators that might be following. He noticed large rocks partially submerged in the current, forming a potential path. Carefully, he tested each one, ensuring it could support the weight of the humans. He signaled the others to follow, stepping lightly across the stones, leading the group with confidence. Lyra watched, her eyes narrowing. He was clever, resourceful, and careful, but she knew she could catch him if she acted at the right moment. She leapt from branch to branch, moving closer, trying to find the perfect angle for an ambush. She could feel the thrill of the hunt building, a familiar rush that she had not experienced in years. But Ethan was ready. He had noticed subtle disturbances in the foliage, small cracks in the bark, and irregularities in the shadows that told him she was nearby. He adjusted his path, leading the group across the river and into denser jungle where her visibility was limited. Each step was precise, calculated, a dance of strategy that left Lyra momentarily frustrated. Hours passed, and the humans began to tire. Sweat poured down their faces, and the oppressive heat of the jungle weighed heavily on them. But Ethan remained calm, guiding them steadily, offering reassurance, and using his intelligence to turn every obstacle into an advantage. He even used parts of the jungle itself to create barriers, confusing Lyra and slowing her pursuit. By late afternoon, Lyra was forced to pause. Her leg had healed enough to move, but the pain was still sharp, a reminder that she was not invincible. She realized that the human had not only survived but had outsmarted her at nearly every turn. For the first time, she felt respect, a recognition that this was no ordinary prey. Ethan led the group to a hidden cave, a temporary shelter he had discovered earlier. He instructed the others to rest, gather water, and tend to minor injuries. As they settled, he scanned the surrounding jungle, feeling the tension in the air. He knew Lyra was nearby, watching, waiting, learning. Night fell again, bringing with it a chorus of alien sounds. Insects hummed, nocturnal predators stirred, and the air grew cooler. Ethan lit a small, controlled fire inside the cave, careful to keep it hidden from view. The humans sat quietly, exhausted but safe for now. Ethan's mind, however, never rested. He thought about Lyra, about her patterns, about the way she had adapted to his movements. He realized that the hunt was no longer one-sided. He had become more than just prey. He had become a strategist, an equal in the dangerous game of survival. From her perch above, Lyra observed the humans. She noted their temporary safety, the calm that Ethan had imposed upon them, and the intelligence with which he had navigated the jungle. She felt a strange mixture of admiration and frustration. She had hunted humans for years, believing them fragile and predictable, yet this one had turned the hunt into a challenge she had never faced before. She made a decision. She would not rush, would not strike blindly. She would watch, learn, and wait for the perfect moment. The human had proven clever, but even the cleverest could make mistakes, and when he did, she would be ready. Ethan, sensing that he had only delayed the inevitable, prepared for what was to come. He had survived the first day, outsmarted the hunter, and protected the group. But he knew the huntress would not remain passive. She would adapt, anticipate, and strike again. He had to remain vigilant, resourceful, and ready for anything. As the night deepened, a sense of mutual recognition formed in the jungle. Lyra respected his skill, his intelligence, and his resilience. Ethan recognized her power, her experience, and her relentless determination. Both understood that the game had changed. The hunter and the hunted were no longer simply predator and prey. They were equals in a deadly dance of strategy, courage, and survival. By the time the first light of dawn touched the jungle canopy, both were preparing for the next phase of the hunt. Lyra would recover, adapt, and strike again, but Ethan would be ready. He had turned the tables, proving that humans were clever, resourceful, and unyielding. The balance of power had shifted, and the jungle itself seemed to acknowledge it, alive with the tension of the ongoing hunt. The second day of the chase began with a new understanding. Ethan moved with quiet confidence, guiding the humans through the dense foliage, avoiding traps and anticipating every danger. Lyra watched from the shadows, fascinated by his skill, driven by the desire to reclaim control. Neither would back down, and both understood that only one could emerge truly victorious. The jungle held its breath as the game continued. Each step, each movement, each decision mattered. And as the sun rose higher, casting light on the green expanse, the hunter and the hunted prepared for the moments that would define the outcome of the hunt. A battle of minds, courage, and the unyielding will to survive. The jungle seemed quieter that morning, though the silence was only an illusion. Birds called out, insects hummed, and the faint rustle of leaves reminded anyone moving through it that danger still lurked everywhere. Ethan Carter led the humans carefully, alert to every shadow and sound. He had survived 2 days of the huntress's clever traps and predators. He had proven himself in ways most humans never could, but he knew the hunt was not over. Lyra Vex was still out there, watching, planning, and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Lyra moved silently above, her amber eyes tracking every movement. Her leg had healed enough for her to move with near-perfect precision, but the memory of the pit incident and Ethan's clever avoidance lingered. She had never encountered a human who could anticipate her strategies so effectively. The thrill of the hunt mixed with a strange feeling she had never felt before, respect. She realized that she could not approach him as a normal prey. This human was different, clever, and determined. He had challenged her, and now the hunt had transformed into something more complex. Ethan paused near a rocky outcrop, signaling the others to stop. He had noticed subtle changes in the ground, disturbances that indicated she might be close. He whispered instructions, careful to keep the group calm while scanning the jungle around him. He had prepared for this moment, using small diversions and misdirections to confuse her. Yet he knew that a direct encounter was inevitable. Lyra decided it was time. She leapt silently from branch to branch, descending closer to the humans. Her movements were precise, careful not to reveal her position too early. She wanted to test him to see if he could truly match her skills. As she approached, she noted his posture, calm, alert, confident. He had grown since the first day, more adept at reading the environment, more aware of the dangers surrounding him. He was no longer simply reacting, he was anticipating. The first direct confrontation occurred near a narrow canyon. Ethan had led the humans there deliberately. The rocky walls offered cover, but they also limited escape routes. Lyra appeared suddenly above them, landing silently on a ledge. Her presence was immediate and commanding. The humans froze, fear evident in their eyes, but Ethan stepped forward, signaling them to stay calm. Lyra regarded him with a mixture of curiosity and caution. She had expected panic, but he did not waver. He looked up at her, meeting her gaze steadily, and for a brief moment the jungle seemed to hold its breath. She realized that he was not merely brave, he was intelligent, confident, and strategic. He had learned her ways, adapted, and turned the hunt into a challenge she had never anticipated. Ethan spoke first, his voice calm but firm. "We don't want to fight, we just want to survive. You've proven yourself, we respect your skills, but you don't have to hurt anyone else." Lyra tilted her head, intrigued by his words. No human had ever addressed her like this. Most would have pleaded, screamed, or tried to run blindly, but he was different. He had survived not because of luck, but because of his intelligence, his foresight, and his courage. For the first time, she considered a different outcome. Perhaps this hunt could end without bloodshed. She leapt down to the canyon floor, her landing precise, controlled. The humans tensed, but Ethan remained calm. "You could have ended this at any time," he continued. "We didn't fight back because we wanted to survive, not because we're weak, but we can work together if you're willing." Lyra studied him closely. His words were genuine, his confidence undeniable. She realized that she had underestimated humans, assuming them fragile and predictable. Yet here was one who had bested her in strategy, intelligence, and adaptability. She had no desire to harm him, not out of fear but out of respect. For the next hours they talked, cautiously, each measuring the other. Ethan shared what he knew about the jungle, the traps, and the predators, demonstrating his skills and knowledge. Lyra, in turn, revealed insights into hunting, tracking, and survival. She was careful not to give away everything, but she recognized the potential in cooperating rather than fighting. As the day wore on, they worked together to navigate the canyon safely. Ethan led the humans past hidden dangers, while Lyra offered guidance on avoiding predators and recognizing subtle signs of danger. The humans followed, learning quickly, their fear giving way to trust in the unusual alliance forming between the human and the huntress. By evening, they reached a clearing where a small waterfall cascaded into a crystal pool. The air was cool, the sound of rushing water soothing after 2 tense days. Ethan and Lyra stood together, observing the humans resting safely. She had not only accepted his leadership, but had begun to appreciate his ingenuity, his courage, and his ability to inspire others. "I never thought a human could do this," she admitted quietly, almost to herself. "Most of you are predictable, weak. But you've changed everything." Ethan smiled faintly, acknowledging her words without arrogance. "We're survivors, we adapt, we find ways to overcome challenges. That's what makes humans human." Lyra considered this. For years she had hunted for sport, seeking thrill and mastery over creatures she considered inferior. Yet in facing Ethan, she had learned something new, not about hunting, but about respect, intelligence, and courage. Humans were more than prey, they were capable, resourceful, and resilient. That night, the humans camped safely under the guidance of both Ethan and Lyra. They built shelters, gathered water, and maintained a careful watch. For the first time, the fear that had dominated their journey was tempered by trust. They knew that the huntress had changed, that she now saw them not as prey but as equals capable of strategy, courage, and survival. Lyra moved quietly through the camp, observing. She noted the humans' interactions, their ingenuity in building shelters, finding food, and maintaining safety. She was fascinated by their creativity and resourcefulness, qualities she had never expected to respect in a prey species. Ethan approached her, offering a small piece of food he had prepared. "You've earned it," he said simply. Not because you're a hunter, but because you're willing to see more than what's in front of you. She accepted it, a small but meaningful gesture. In that moment, she understood that the hunt had transformed. It was no longer about domination or survival alone. It was about respect, understanding, and the recognition of skill and courage. The following day, Ethan led the humans through the final stretch of the jungle. Lyra stayed close but careful not to interfere unnecessarily. She allowed him to navigate, observing quietly, impressed by his foresight and adaptability. The humans moved with confidence now, guided by his steady hand and her subtle protection. Along the way, they encountered new challenges. A fast-moving river with slippery rocks, aggressive alien wildlife, and complex terrain filled with hidden pitfalls. Each time, Ethan anticipated the danger, using both his knowledge and intuition. Lyra added her expertise when necessary, pointing out hidden dangers and providing insights on survival techniques. Together, they formed a remarkable team, blending human ingenuity with alien skill. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of the jungle, where a plateau offered a view of the distant city they had intended to reach. Relief washed over the humans as they realized the worst of the danger was behind them. Ethan turned to Lyra, a smile of quiet gratitude on his face. "We made it," he said, "thanks to both of us." Lyra regarded him carefully. She had learned more in these past 3 days than in many years of hunting. She had learned that humans were clever, adaptable, and courageous. She had learned that respect and understanding could be as powerful as skill and strength. For the first time, she felt something she had never felt before, not just admiration but a connection, an acknowledgement of equal intelligence and capability. "I underestimated you," she admitted, her voice calm and steady. "Not just you, but your species. I see now that humans are capable of more than I imagined. You are remarkable." Ethan nodded, accepting her words without arrogance. "And you're a remarkable hunter," he said. "But it's not just about hunting. It's about understanding, adapting, and working together. That's what makes a difference." Lyra considered this as they stood together, overlooking the vast landscape. For the first time, she saw humans not as prey, but as equals, capable of strategy, courage, and ingenuity. She had hunted for sport, seeking the thrill of domination. But in facing Ethan, she had discovered something far more valuable: respect, understanding, and the realization that intelligence and courage were worth more than victory alone. The humans approached the plateau, their spirits lifted, their confidence restored. They had survived the hunt, not just because of strength or luck, but because of intelligence, adaptability, and courage. Ethan had led them through danger, turning the tables on a hunter who had never been bested before. Lyra had watched, learned, and ultimately respected the human spirit. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden light over the jungle, the huntress and the human stood side by side, watching the humans move safely toward civilization. The danger had passed, but the lessons remained. Lyra understood that hunting humans for sport was a mistake, for they were clever, resourceful, and resilient. Ethan understood that courage, intelligence, and strategy could overcome even the most formidable predator. In that moment, the jungle seemed to breathe a sigh of relief, acknowledging the transformation. The hunter had become a teacher, the hunted had become a strategist, and a bond of respect had formed between them. What had begun as a pursuit of sport had become a story of intelligence, courage, and understanding, a reminder that true strength lay not in domination, but in respect, adaptability, and the recognition of worth. Lyra finally spoke, her voice soft but resolute. "I will not hunt humans for sport again. I see now what I was blind to before. There is strength, intelligence, and courage here that I cannot ignore." Ethan smiled, feeling the weight of the past days lift. "And I respect you for teaching me as much as I've taught you. The jungle has tested us both, and we've both survived because of it." The humans, safe and thriving, looked back at the two figures, the huntress and the human strategist. Neither was dominant, neither submissive. They were equals, bound by experience, respect, and the shared understanding that courage, intelligence, and strategy could shape even the most dangerous challenges. As the stars began to appear in the twilight sky, Lyra turned to Ethan. "Perhaps there are more lessons to learn," she said, "and perhaps we can face them together." Ethan nodded. "Together," he agreed. And for the first time, the predator and the human walked forward not as hunter and prey, but as allies, each acknowledging the strength and value of the other. The jungle held its secrets still, alive and dangerous, but the story of the hunt had changed. No longer a tale of sport or dominance, it had become a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and resilience, and the power of respect to transform even the fiercest hunt into an alliance of equals.